If you liked this episode of the Hockey IQ podcast, please leave a like, a comment, and especially review our podcast. If you truly listened all the way to the end and you're listening to this right now, you enjoyed this episode. Please go and give it a 5-star review. That helps us out more than you know. Thank you so much and look forward to the next one. On the Hockey IQ podcast today, we bring on back Brian Slugocki for a little series here. We're going to talk about developing and improving and just getting better. Brian, excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking again. We talk a lot offline, so it'd be good to get this one recorded.
Terrible. You're giving away all of the secrets. Good. Who else are you talking with? Let's talk and spill all the beans. So, all right, stopping you before you get going. Let's first start talk about coach development. So you and I've we're on the younger side. Let's say we're both under 40.
hmm
Um, so let's start with some just personal experiences and growth. Like from a young coach to where you are today, what are some things that have happened for you that you've had to overcome maybe recently that's super fresh and memorable, or just something that was so groundbreaking that it will never leave your mind?
Ooh, that's a good question. There's a few that really stand out that made me better. Going maybe back to one of my first years coaching professionals, I was maybe like 24 or 25. And this was the first time Matthews was back in Arizona, and there was a bunch of maybe like 6 or 7 like minor pro friends of his and some guys I grew up with. And I thought I was obviously a fantastic skills coach, teacher, whatever, because I'm working with these pros. This is like my first summer ever. Um, and the stuff that we were doing and how they were enjoying it was just, I learned very quickly that they were not loving what I was doing on the ice. And they even had one of their buddies come up to me and be like, "Hey, can we move on to another drill now?" And at the time, that was so like ego crushing. I was like, oh my God, I'm not a good coach. Like, this is awful. Um, I've got all these like pro players and they're telling me like this is not a good drill, whatever. And but it forced me to talk with some mentors and see like, hey, how can I improve my practices? They don't like what I'm doing. You know, I started asking players for feedback. It was one of the first times in my coaching path that it was really like a low moment. I felt awful after that skate because of just I knew it was bad, but then for them to reinforce it. But then that kind of exploration of talking with people, asking questions, being vulnerable, and being like, okay, this is how I can improve, like was definitely a defining moment for me. I would say like a biggest highlight was during like November of the COVID year. I think it was like 2021. Yeah, it was 2020 or 21 when it was like when I was skating, but most of the places across the country were closed down or shut down. The rinks were all, especially up north in Canada. And there was a group of NHL players skating in Arizona, included Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, Jonathan Taves, Matt Dumba, Tage Thompson, Jake Bean. There was like 4 other pros that, yeah, were skating in Scottsdale, and I was aware that they were skating them, but I wasn't able to get on the ice. Like I was really bummed. Like I was really hoping, to jump out there with them. But then one morning I got a call from Shane Doan, and I was familiar with him because I coached his kid when he was 13, 14 years old. But he called me at like 8:30 and says like, "Hey, I can't make today's skate. I got this group of kind of like good NHL players. You think you could skate them today?" And in my mind, I'm kind of laughing like, I know you're underselling this. Like, I know who's out there, and this is not just a regular group of NHL players. Um, but I ended up running that skate with those players for an entire week, and it was extremely like challenging. It was a lot of like anxiety the first day of like, oh my God, what am I doing out here with these players? Um, it forced me to improve my coaching though, because you got to think very quick on your feet with those guys. And it got me over my fear or like my, um, I didn't put NHL players as much of a on a pedestal after that week because I really just got to a point where, hey, they're just dudes who are really good at playing hockey. And it was a really good mindset shift for me to not be so like I shouldn't be out here, if you're following me.
So developing your confidence of like, I'm just a dude. They're
Hmm.
just a dude.
Hmm.
We're just out here doing it. It just happens that what we're doing is pretty amazing.
Yeah, they're just dudes who are the best at the world at what they do. But I've got very fond memories of watching some of them just, warm up with simple drills and just being mesmerized by how quickly, and then a very vivid memory that will always stand out that I don't think many people can copy is we were doing this just like continuous 2-on-1 flow drill just to kind of get warmed up. And we were like short D, so I just like stepped in, not really looking to see who was going. And I ended up taking a 2-on-1 from Matthews and McDavid. So I was like in my mind while I'm playing defense against these guys, and granted, like, I'm playing 60% D. I'm like, I've got, world's best player on this side, world's best shooter on this side. Like, this is such a crazy, almost like out of body moment as I'm playing defense. I think they ended up scoring or something. I'm sure
I
they
feel
did.
for the goalies.
Yeah, the goal, it was a privilege for them to be out there. I think actually Peter Budaj came out for a week too at the end of his career. But yeah, it was a big career like big mindset shift after that week.
All right, so we've got some early coaching, which is basically, hey, it's okay to be vulnerable. Next one of like, don't put anyone on a pedestal. We're all equal in, the desire to help each other.
Yep.
What's something that you're currently wrestling with?
Hmm. Um, that is a great question. I mean, I think just to look at the not putting on a pedestal, like I think it's still important that like you need to, for me, I always want to like respect this athlete coach relationship. Um, and so while I'm not going to put them on a pedestal as far as like I'm in awe of what they do, like I'm not a fan. I should try to like, I don't know if I'm clear on that, but I try to still respect them as like these are elite athletes, and I need to be at my best. Like, so I am gonna like, I mean, this is just respect essentially. Like, I want to make sure that you get the most out of this session, and me knowing that you're the best at what you do or you're in the NHL, like that does, that there is a slight, I don't know if it's a pedestal, but there's significance to that.
So it's something that you've overcome, but something you're still trying to perfect.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think I'm much more comfortable with a lot of these players now, and I'm also much a big thing, and it takes a while to get is being okay with them not wanting to do something that a drill you came up with, or they want to change it to add. Sometimes coaches are like, here's what the drill is. You're going to skate here, here, like you're going to do it this exact way. And they don't really take questions from the players or like, hey, can we add this? Like I say to the players a lot, like the way I view it is I'm just gonna give you the walls, the frame of the drill, but I want you to decorate it. I want you to put the paint on it, you to create it. Like I'm looking for these one or two specific skills, movements, concepts, whatever. Whatever you do around that, I don't particularly care. So I really let players like, hey, if you want to add a rimmed puck to this, if you want to start it this way, if you want to do it that way, finish that way, like um, I'm much more flexible and open to that type of stuff now, as opposed to a few years ago, I would have been like, no, 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 like we need to do it like this way because this is how I envision it. Like, there's no deviating from my drill. So that's a thing that I've become better at, I would say.
Okay, so you're obviously working really hard at what you do, super hard. And I know we were going to go back and forth on this,
Hmm.
but I'm enjoying
Yeah,
asking you questions. So we'll have to put some Q&A
yeah.
at the end for your stuff too. But the idea of just like you're trying super hard, you really want it, you don't want to disappoint, you don't want to disrespect. where does it become an issue where we're trying too hard to be like that perfect coach and have the perfect thing to say and always being
Yeah. Um, I really wanted to do that when my first like 5 or 6 years coaching. Like I always, because I read and I researched so much on the language of coaching, external versus internal cueing, be like I really learned a lot about the science of coaching. And there's a lot of value in understanding that there are certain phrases, there are certain techniques, etc., that do produce like better learning outcomes. There's no debate about that. But you don't need to, and this is something I struggle with my kids, is not every moment needs to be like a perfect teaching moment. Not every moment needs to be like a lesson. You can just throw offhand comments. Like this one that you and I always kind of joke about is, does that make sense? Like when you finish a drill, do you get what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Like I know it's not an effective coaching thing. I know that like people would say you should give feedback a different way, but I am absolutely guilty of occasionally saying, does that make sense? Like I'm aware of it while I'm saying it, but I'm not gonna like I used to feel bad. I'm like, oh shoot, I should have said this. But now like I'm not as worried about my specific words on every single interaction I have with the player. However, that doesn't mean, again, this is like a spectrum. I still am extremely aware of the language I use, the phrasing I use, the visuals I want the player to like visualize, but I don't obsess over if it was like every word was delivered with the right context and, etc. Does that make sense, Greg?
sometimes you just want to leave the door open, okay, Brian?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a feel that you get over time as you observe, reflect, get to understand the scenario, situation, some dynamics, etc. I always love one of my favorite players of all time, and he's probably just a great all-around human being, Ray Whitney, because hard nosed, played the right way, never the most skilled guy, but always give it to you real.
Mm-hmm.
And he would let you know when things are really stupid.
Yes.
He's a bit of a hockey genius for me when I remember him back in the day, but I was also young, so I could be completely wrong.
Yes, I think we spoke. I coached with him. I was his assistant coach for 4 years or so, and it was um he doesn't miss anything. That was always kind of a joke on the bench. Like when we're coaching, like he sees everything. So if you made a mistake down in the corner or something, like he caught it. So it was always really like he was always testing, not like purposely, but like, hey, did you see that? Like it really forced me to like become aware of like the whole game. Like he's like tactically, we always would say like I was very good a technical coach, but he understood the tactics I mean, to play for how 20 years to have 1,500 points or whatever he had, like obviously a very very smart player. So to have him as a mentor, a friend, head coach for a long time, yeah, there's a lot of value in that for sure.
All right, well, help us learn from your learnings.
um One of the biggest things that just talk about his experience with Carolina and just when they were winning their Stanley Cup. um you know, he, and this is why it was so great that he was just like so much about the team and, not having any really like nobody's above the team. Nobody's above the team. That was a really important thing for, we were coaching 13, 14, 15-year olds, like, as they grew. And so it was really important that everybody understands like you're a part of a team. And he told me one day we were on the ice that when he was with Carolina, when they won the cup, that they, their superstar at the time was Jordan Stahl. He was like a rookie, but besides that, like they really didn't have any like studs or stars on the team, and they really relied on the like, um, I mean, I'm even blanking on the phrase. I know I told it to you earlier, but like, it's not
No,
about the.
it's amazing what you
Oh
can
yeah, yeah.
accomplish when
Thank
no
you.
one cares who gets the credit.
Yeah, like I, it's such a cliche, but to hear a friend who won a Stanley Cup to hear him say that was like, wow, there's obviously a lot of value in that. So I think that was really a big teaching moment, but then also he was a great teacher. He was very demanding of players, which I think you can be a hard coach, but also love your players and be a joy to be around. And that was one thing he was very good at. But also, like, we would do systems and tactics and drills, etc. But like we did a lot of games because that's how he got better as a kid. Like, playing on the pond, and like we really believe like that's where you get that feel for the game, that that love for the game. And partly with the love here, I always thought this was one of the coolest things, and it was always different than what other coaches did. But after a tournament, if we had a really rough weekend, it's common. A lot of coaches are typically like, if you go 0 and 5, 0 and 4, whatever, and it's a bad weekend, so many coaches the next day at practice, they're going to backskate the guys because you didn't work hard enough, whatever. So they're just going to like skate the shit out of the players. The practice is going to suck, and like, they're going to move on. But what he would always do, for the most part, is he would always tell me to like hide some tennis balls in my jacket, bring a football or something, and we would have like a game day, a fun day, like a scrimmage, playing football, tennis on the ice, after a loss. And he was like, they already hate being around the team right now. They already hate hockey right now. They just had an 0 and 4 weekend. Like, they already feel crappy. Why are we going to come in and just like hammer it again for them to hate hockey, hate coaches, etc., for another 4 or 5 days? Then we ruin the next couple practices. Let's just like chalk it up as that's just okay. That happened. Let's move on. Let's work hard. Let's have fun today. Let's get our love for the game of working hard. Let's get that back. And like, I mean, it was amazing how quickly we could rebound after bad weekends because like we had fun right away. We didn't punish them if they played poorly over the weekend.
As a man who's only used the bag skate, I think once, couldn't agree more. And
Yeah.
it was really because they let one of their teammates down as a group,
Yeah. I
and
mean,
it was more of a character lesson than anything else.
yeah. That's not to
That
say we
was
didn't have hard skates, but in
yeah,
general, yeah, that was the yeah.
excellent. You know what? While we're at it, let's dive into maybe some other people that you've learned from. You don't have to use names. What are maybe some things? Um, I'm going to just telepathically tell you the first person who you know, who you've loved many times over,
Okay.
and the second person you always loved, continue to love, still have big love in your heart. What are some lessons from those two guys? And well, just one at a time.
I would say I think a part of it was we've kind of circled around the idea of like coach centered versus athlete centered, and is the coach the sole transmitter of information, or is there a sort of relationship collaboration between the player and the coach? um I think some coaches, whether it's ego driven, whether it's like a insecurity thing, or also just like they want to be viewed as the expert, is there's a lot of, I'm going to tell you what you need to get better at. I know the next drill that we're going to do. I know this is what it should look like. This is what it should feel like. Like, the coach is very much at the center of the whole process versus talking with the player, understanding what they're feeling, what they're looking to get out of this sequence. You're still coming to the player with ideas on how they can improve, what they can get better at, and your visions for their game. But it is I really use the word collaboration. Um, and for me, that's what it has to be, especially with, we're talking about like professional players, college players, not, 8-year-olds. But I think in general, I believe a lot in collaboration, because I think it forces players to take ownership of their development. But like, those players, they want to have a say, and I think they get, when they trust that they can give you feedback about, I don't like this, I do like this, I think it just improves your relationship, and you're able to um like, I don't think coaches like, we need to credit the player's experience for when they're, because sometimes we'll design drills or practices, whatever, but we don't know what it feels like to do those drills. We don't know what it feels like to do, play in this game. Like, I don't know how many times I've on a whiteboard like drew up the most brilliant game ever in my mind, but then when I watch the players play it, I'm like, oh, this doesn't work at all. Like, this is not as, quick flowing as I thought. And it's important that a coach is able to take that feedback from a player and be like, hey, is this working? Is this not working? And not feel like they have to puff their chest up and be like, no, we're gonna keep doing this drill because I said we're gonna do this drill. Which I know some coaches can have a tendency to do. They don't want to feel like they're giving up power to the players. But I really try to not view relationships, especially with older players, as like a power dynamic. Like, we don't have to struggle over like who's in charge here. Like, I'm okay with sometimes being in charge. I'm okay with following you. And I don't know if a lot of coaches, I don't know if they're always okay with that.
All right, one down, one to go.
It was kind of a sum up of, I would say, two approaches. But I think like there's also um, there's a play. I mean, this is a dynamic that I feel like I walk sometimes, is this playfulness between you and a player of like, okay, how much is it? I don't know how to describe it. Like, hmm, I might have to kind of think about that one for a second. Because you kind of got, I don't know if I can, I don't know, Greg. I don't know if you can like throw me a lifeline here. I'm not sure if I could,
I mean, I'm thinking about, what are some things you've taken from this person, like, and input into your own abilities that have helped you level up. One, there's obviously those people in our life that help challenge us in a healthy way. Like, it's
mhm.
okay to disagree, but not be disagreeable.
Yeah.
So, what has maybe this person done for you? Maybe it comes from a disagreement or just back and forth, or maybe it's an alignment that you guys have, but something
Uh,
that's lit a light bulb like, boom,
yeah.
this is how I can get better, this is how I can help people more.
Yeah. That's a good way to describe it. Yes, and I think some like a role that I appreciate that people have taken in my life is like, even if we have a lot of very similar ideas, there's still times when, to play devil's advocate or to really force myself, you know, to flesh out ideas, or like, hey, are you sure about this? Like, really think about what you're trying to do here and dive into the really nitty gritty of, I really think it's important that you need to challenge, like, okay, why do you believe the things that you do? Because there's a lot of surface level beliefs that people might have about coaching, about teaching, etc., or why you are, teaching a certain concept skill. And so I think there was a lot of growth in continuing to challenge assumptions, but the challenge would not come in a like a combative, you're wrong, you need, don't think this way. It's, I guess this is more like kind of the Socratic method, is like asking questions. Okay, what else, what else could be the answer here? Like, what's another way you could look at this? Like, do you think could this be wrong? And that kind of makes me think of a side note is, a lot of times when I'm trying to come up with like new ideas or challenge ideas, is I really, I'll use ChatGPT for this, or I'll talk to other people. It's like, in what ways could I be wrong about my current opinion? And like, who would be people that would disagree with me? Is I really do that with a lot of my ideas, to see if when I read the opposition to what I think, do I understand it? I mean, I should like respect it in a sense, but I really enjoy this process, or this, I like, okay, you have this idea, you come up with a bunch of reasons why you think you might, based off of your reading, your experience, etc., why you might believe this thing. But now you need to talk with or interact with something that's going to tell you, um, no, my experience was the total opposite, and I still had success. In what ways does that invalidate my opinion? And I think that helps you, better solidify your ideas and opinions when you interact it with things or people who are going to challenge it in a productive way.
Yeah. It's nice to have those people that are very direct with the mentorship, which is fantastic. I also would love to say that there's sometimes you can see from afar. It's like, ooh, I really like that about so and so.
Mm-hmm.
Or I have someone who is like my anti-mentor. Like if I see them doing something, I'm thinking very strongly about, do I do this? And if so, I need to get this out of whatever I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I call him my anti-mentor. I'm doing the
I
opposite.
It's
He goes left, I go right.
funny you said. I was thinking about that with parenting recently, because everybody like everybody is always judging you as a parent, whether good or bad. Like, and it's I when I look at parents in the in the wild, whatever, it's not necessarily like judging positively or negatively, but you do have a sense of like, oh, I don't want to talk to my kids that way, or oh, I like the way they're parenting that kid. So like I totally there is a thing about like I don't want to be that, but I do want to be this. So I do think you need things that are like pulling you and also things that are pushing you. And it's depends on, yeah, it's subject.
Which is perfect. The last piece we'll do here in part one before we dive into part two is going to be on relationship building with players. So as a coach, we're looking towards building really great relationships with our players. Maybe there's some coaches that don't care to do that, but everyone that I've ever talked to always wants to have a good relationship with their players, wants the best for their players. Some are better at this than others. Feel free to ask a question or answer a question. So I'll leave it up to you. Like wanting to be really good people, we want to have these great relationships that help us leverage
Hmm.
this relation. Like we want to be good at the relationship so we can leverage it better to really help these people because we truly care about them.
Yeah. I'll just give a quick story and then like one thing that I always try to do, especially when I was coaching kids, I would always try to find one or two things outside of hockey that me and this kid had in common that we both liked, whether it was video games, it was science, it was history, it was like hiking, whatever it was that this kid, I really wanted to learn who the kid is outside of the sport. And if we connected on that one thing, I always knew one, I think it shows that I'm interested in their life. Hey, like I'm not like this scary coach up on this pedestal, like I want us to view, we're equals in this situation in a sense. But I always found too, like if there was ever moments with a player that they felt disconnected or I wasn't connecting with them, they were having a hard time, I could always go back to this like, well, hey, how's, you've been really working in science recently about the planets. Like I love the planets too. Like tell me some interesting facts about like I could get the kid to light up about something outside of hockey and build that connection. So it was one way that I was able to start building a relationship with just the human versus just like the player. Because you're absolutely right. Like so much of I just had a first session with somebody recently and I was talking to the goalie who was in net for us. He was not the player I was working with. And I told him, I was like, first time sessions with players are always so interesting because there's this like really underlying dynamic of trying to figure out what our language is going to be together. Do we want to continue to work together? Like, do you like what we're doing? So there's so much of this like starting to build like a web of a relationship. Um, because I know that not a lot of criticism or feedback can come until a player knows that like I'm invested in them and then we have this relationship. They're not going to be as willing to take feedback or criticism if I'm just like, this external coach.
So how do you bridge that gap or quicken the bridge?
Um, few different ways. First way that comes to mind is it's really important that you know the player and so you watch if it's if you're able to, you watch a lot of reps or a lot of games with the player. So as a coach, obviously, if you're a team coach, you're going to be spending a lot of time with these players. And so I think it's important that when you start interacting with them, that you're not just giving them like generic feedback. Like you're able to say very specifically, like, hey, in that game during this shift, I noticed you do this a lot, or I've seen you like you have this tendency, you have this like, hey, I noticed when you go to your left, like it looks like it's awkward for you. And that way they're able to tell that like, hey, you've invested time in learning who I am and you can bring knowledge to this thing. So I think one is you provide a lot of like you have a lot of knowledge about them. I think anybody's going to be interested in in if you've studied that person enough to be like, I can give you clues about what you do that maybe maybe you don't know. Um, I think it goes back to, I mean, you're always like respect as though things are always going to be important, like psychological safety, which is, I don't know if we were talking about this before or recently, but like players really need to feel like that in your presence, in your practices, whatever, that they are safe to make mistakes, safe to look silly, to look dumb. They are safe from coaches yelling at them if they try things. And if they can get that feeling of safetiness and of feeling okay to take chances, you're going to see players more willing to interact with the coach because they're going to start to see, improvements in their game. But you're going to see a lot, like a bigger development over time because players feel like they're not timid. They're not worried about making mistakes. Like, again, they feel safe in the environment and they're not constantly like trying to protect themselves. Like, you don't grow from a mindset of like feeling anxious or worried. That's a hard mindset to grow from.
So another reason why not to yell at players. All right, I'll take that one down. I know. I'm asking all the questions, but I feel like you're a really good question asker. So maybe I'll dish it out to
Yeah,
you to
I'll
come up
start.
with a few because there's no way that deep
Uh,
thinking Brian here has not come up with something.
um, I mean, I like, okay, yeah, one for you. And this is, I don't know if there is a right or wrong answer, but how do you think about, you know, players of similar skill levels? Like, how are you going to improve? Some players don't want to get better. Like, yes, they've got all the tools, etc. But how do you balance this between like players feeling like I'm good where I'm at, or maybe players who are less skilled, they're harder to play during a game, but they continually want to get better. Like, yeah, I mean, how do you think about coaching kids maybe who you think they have the potential to be better, but they don't necessarily want to, they're just playing for fun, for example, and this is like their third or second or third sport.
I think you kind of one of the great things about you, Brian, is sometimes you lead to where we probably should be going. Fortunate. Some people I
Uh-oh.
hate the leading questions because they always go to the wrong areas, but I think you go to the right areas, which is like it's a very personal thing. Like especially in youth hockey, I call them like the break off stages. Like you get the stage where it's like, okay, I love being on the ice. I love being out here for whatever reason. You first fall in love with putting on the gear, grabbing up a stick, grabbing a puck. Then it comes to the point of like, oh, I actually might want to be good at this.
Mm-hmm.
Then it comes to the point of contact. Am I willing to compete for this? Then it comes to the point of like, am I willing to prepare for this? So I call them like the 3 or 4 break off stages of like, is a player going to continue either one to push themselves, or are we just going to quit, or are we just going to, I'm just going to find a level that is suitable for me. Um, so there's understanding the person of like, okay, why are they here?
Mm-hmm.
What do they enjoy? Is it the challenge? Is it the success? Is it the being with my buddies? Whatever that may be as the starting point. Because as you know,
Reminds me of something.
it doesn't matter where you want them to go. It's up to them. Obviously, I want to go back to Ray on this with you want the players to leave you enjoying and loving this more than when they started.
Yep.
And how do you maybe encourage or open some doors and opportunities? Um, no one usually goes into the world to be X, Y, and Z, very specific niche accountant. They probably had some mentorship, some encouragement, some found joy through the process of life that led them to that.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly with hockey and the players that we have, it's helping them forge their path, which may be easier because people have done that exact path or similar in the past versus one that may be a little more novel. And what is right and why is personalized. So that's more like the path and wanting to
Yep.
improve. And then from like a on ice skills standpoint, like I use a classic example of like we're going to work on some kind of skating and how do you scaffold the difficulty appropriate for 3 different stages. Last 2 years, 3 years, had a high school team that had players that were coming out of house hockey and those that were seniors coming out of double A hockey. 4 years of getting big, strong, and going through puberty versus someone who maybe hasn't hit puberty, doesn't have any of that, and just this
Mm-hmm.
year because it's been fun. And now we're hitting those break points. So how do you properly skill that appropriate for them within a team practice? And I think that's a challenge that many coaches would struggle with, but something that if they're open to it would help make them better.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I like the way that you break it down like that as far as there definitely is stages when the game is going to get harder, and are you still having success with it? Do you still want to keep getting better at it? And that takes me back to, I maybe should have mentioned this earlier in the when you're talking about coaching lessons, is I remember I was coaching this 12 or 13-year-old, and for weeks I was just getting more and more upset with this kid. And this was like when I was like first started coaching, because his like he didn't even like try, like he was missing everything. Like there was just like no effort. Like it was just was in my mind there was like no effort, etc. And everything was just like, it looked like he always had an attitude. And I remember one day, we were doing a drill. He was supposed to like open up and catch a pass, and I gave him a pass, and he like missed it. And I like, kind of I yelled at him in front of the like on the ice. I was like, what are you doing? Like, like it just was like, what are you doing out here right now? And he like turned and looked at me and grinned. He's like 13, 14 years old. His face is full of tears, and he's like, I don't even want to be here. My dad is forcing me to be here. And as soon as he said that, like my whole like image of this kid just completely changed, because for these several weeks I had this idea in my mindset that like everybody who's out on this ice is like wanting to be in the NHL. They all want to get better. Like that's where everybody's mindset is. And even though they're a bunch of like house and A players, but my mindset was like, if they want to get better, they need to have this mindset. Like this is whatever. And seeing this kid like in tears being like, my dad is forcing me to be out here, was like, I got to coach this kid totally different. Like I can still, he can still learn how to play hockey. Like I'm still going to teach him how to play hockey, but like, one, if his dad is forcing him to be out here, like that's a problem. But also now, like my job is to just get him, maybe when he comes here, this is his only time of the week that he's just going to be with his friends and having fun. And like within reason, can I get him to just love being out here away from, say, he's got a stressful school? Can I just get him to have an hour of just fun? Like, I don't want him to disrupt what we're doing, but like, this kid needs more than just, you need to be tougher, you need to be stronger. And if you want, you got to be like Kobe if you want to go to the, like, he just needed somebody just to like listen. And it was like, we're kind of getting back to like, I think it's important when you're coaching certain kids, players, whatever, that you understand, as you said, where do you want to go with this thing? Like, do you want me to like coach you? Like, you want to go to the NHL? You want, like, even if that's way outside your skill base, or are you just out here to like, have fun with your friends once a week? Like, So I think it is important that you know your players and you know your individuals.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're going to cut on episode 1 here, and we'll meet everyone back in a week or two for part 2, or it'll be right after this if you're hitting it well after the release dates.
Thank you. Yeah, looking forward to talking more.
That concludes this week's episode. Thanks for joining us here at Hockey IQ. If you haven't already, take a quick moment to hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and drop a review. If you want to be a great teammate, even recommend us to a friend. You can follow us at Hockey's Arsenal on Twitter and Instagram. Check out the website, hockeysarsenal.com, where you can subscribe to the weekly newsletter. You won't regret it. Catch your buttes here next week for a brand new episode.